Professor Kehinde Andrews, what do you make of Trevor Phillips' comments that this is virtue signalling on steroids? And his associated point, which is it's much better to look and invest in current students' future prospects rather than looking back at what's already happened.
Well, I do not want to endorse the University of Cambridge process because actually I think it's a PR exercise, it's a parody in some ways. In fact, if you actually look at one of the problems and legacies of racism in universities, it's the fact that there are very few black members of staff. It's mostly white staff. And actually what Cambridge are doing is saying that we're going to get our almost exclusively white Centre for African Studies of all things is going to research our links to slavery. So like, it's a complete parody. So on that point, I agree. But on the issue that we shouldn't be looking into these, that's outrageous. You cannot understand the current problem of students' access, etc., without understanding the deep legacy of slavery, racism in universities.
What is the direct link between slavery and our academic institutions?
Well, I mean, there's this idea that our institutions are these bastions of freedom. Actually, this is not the case. The idea that I'm not a human being came from university study. If you look at the links with
not
the money...
Not a human being as a black man?
Yeah, as a black person. This is the idea of race. It's university scholars in places like Cambridge and other universities in Europe. That's the knowledge base of it. Then you also have where the money came from and the investment. We shouldn't be surprised that that the university looks like it looks today because that is the legacy of the university. And if you don't understand that history, how could you possibly understand where to go?
Radhika, what do you make of that? You know, it's a really important part, not just of history, but of our present, actually, because it's the foundation.
So to me, I really personally kind of agree with Trevor Phillips on this in the sense that I don't really feel like we're going to gain a huge amount from doing this 35-month inquiry that's going to take lots of time, money, efforts, and I'd much rather that all of those resources went on looking into what's going on at the moment. And so it's just come out today, there's a Universities UK study that shows that there's a really big gap between black, white and Asian students in terms of getting top degrees, with white students being more likely to get top degrees, and that's not linked to their previous attainments. So to me, I'd much rather that universities spent that money and time and effort into fixing things at the moment, whether it's publishing their ethnicity gaps in terms of degrees, whether it's putting money on giving grants to people from different backgrounds. I really feel like I'd much rather see them looking at the present and the future.
We had Reverend Al Sharpton in yesterday, of course, the sort of legendary civil rights activist from America. He'd spoken at Cambridge University the night before and had, you know, made the point that there just weren't even the black faces in the audience. And in fact, the percentage of black ethnic minority students to these, I mean, to all institutions, but to particularly Oxford and Cambridge, is very low, actually, compared to their peers in, you know, amongst other universities. So that's the point, isn't it? That let's invest in that.
Yeah, but I guess that's my point I'm making. We all act like we're surprised. But this is actually the legacy of the university.
But we are where we are, Professor Andrews. That's the thing, isn't it? We are where we are. And although it's interesting and, you know, painful to look at the link to the past, is it actually helpful to spend all that money?
Yeah, because, for example, if we recognise that the university has been one of the central places of creating racial inequality, then what should come out of this, hopefully, is that Cambridge are now going to say, well, actually, let's invest, let's put some money in, reparations for this in order to deal with it. But if you don't have the historical context, you can't do that.
Is 35-month inquiry to say exactly what you've just said?
Well, like I said, I'm not a fan of this Cambridge process, believe me, but I think the principle that we have to really understand what the universities and other institutions owe to solve this problem, and you can only get there by looking at the history. That's why you can't forget the history. These things are very much interconnected.
And that has to be crucial, doesn't it, Radhika? That if we do want to move forward and establish what we're all talking about, unless you can understand exactly where it's gone wrong in the past, you can make sure those mistakes aren't made again.
To me, obviously, we need to be talking about history. I think we need to be open about it, and it shouldn't be a taboo in any way, because that, you know, carrying that shame just stops the healing and stops the moving on. But at the same time, I feel like there's a time and a place. We should be talking about these in history subjects. You know, we never, at school, I learned about World War I and World War II. We rarely touched on things like the Empire. I think it's important that students know about these things. But at the same time, this 35-month inquiry. I don't feel like it's the time and the place to be looking into it. I'd much rather they put that money into moving forward.
There's a sort of a broader issue that's certainly being confronted and talked about a lot more now, which is lots of popular culture. For example, look at TV shows from a few decades ago and how
Many fighters say, look, this is offensive, let's not put it on TV. But again, we just don't like to deal with this history. We like to pretend that, oh, it was just that time. These things are all linked, they're all connected. And actually, if we're going to acknowledge that something's problematic, why on earth would we keep putting it on? What's wrong with just saying that's for the past?